In Sydney, Australia, and in Melbourne, Australia, there are going to be these major protests. They're going to be shutting down Sydney and Melbourne so that these dingbat pro-Palestine activist types can march across the streets of Sydney, all for Gaza, all for the lie that apparently Israel is committing a genocide in Gaza. People are believing in a great deal of propaganda created by Hamas, and they're all becoming useful idiots. But nevertheless, ladies and gentlemen, we live in a free country, so these people are allowed to protest. But I've got a huge problem with the fact that these dingbats are all deciding to shut down major thoroughfares for their activism. What in the world is shutting down Sydney Harbour Bridge, marching across Sydney Harbour Bridge, which is a iconic landmark in Sydney, Australia, by the way? What is shutting down Sydney Harbour Bridge going to achieve for Gaza? Let me just ask that quite clearly. What is this going to do aside from cause a great deal of havoc and annoyance for people that are trying to do and get about their daily lives in the streets of Sydney, Australia, trying to get into the city, but they can't get into the city anymore. They have to divert themselves and go the other bloody way. It's honestly unacceptable stuff, if you ask me. But yet the Supreme Court of Australia, ladies and gentlemen, decided to side with the activist protesters. And they're going, well, you know, we've got to have a difference between politics and the Supreme Court. And I agree. Fantastic. You're not having the government shut down a protest, because if the government were to get involved, I disagree with Tony Abbott's take, because Tony Abbott was saying that the government needed to shut this down because this is a governmental political situation. And the moment you give the government that kind of power to shut down protests, honestly, man, it just gets worse from there. Believe you me. But the good thing is, the Supreme Court got involved. The bad thing is the Supreme Court obviously sided with the dingbat Gaza pro-Muslim, pro-Palestine activists, because did you really think that the Supreme Court was going to side with sanity and, well, decency? And there's been lots of people that I've noticed over on X that are saying, if you're not marching with these people, over 50-something thousand, I think the number was last time I checked. There's lots of people that are going to be marching across the streets of Sydney, shutting it down. And to me, I look at it and I'm going, I don't care whether you are pro-Palestinian or pro-Gaza. What is this ever going to achieve? If you want to protest like this, go over to Gaza for all I care. You're not really doing anything in Australia. The politicians are not going to do much, because aside from them seeing you protest, they're going to be like, oh, well, I'm going to virtue signal anyway. But you protesting in the streets, you think you're actually going to achieve something? What? Make everyone hate you even more? Like, I understand people have got this bee in their bonnet, right? Like a supposed genocide. They're being starved and everything along those lines. But that's propaganda. There's a great deal of information that is missing that people don't seem to really care about. Now, Peter Fitzsimmons posted this because Sydney Harbour Bridge, 1 p.m., which the march apparently started at the time I'm recording this, the meeting at Lang Park. Our march is going ahead. See you on the Sydney Harbour Bridge. And the organisers said that they were going to march regardless of the Supreme Court's decision. So it didn't matter if the Supreme Court said you're not allowed to march, they were still going to march anyway. So what does that tell you about their obedience to rule of law? They don't care about it. Let's just make that abundantly clear. But when they win, oh, man, they shout it from the rooftops. But Peter goes, whether you agree with the court's decision or not, I do. It is great that we have a judiciary still entirely independent of government. I agree to that. And Sue Higginson, Greens MP, there's been a lot of dingbat politicians, obviously the Greens, that are all marching with the pro-Palestinian other dingbats. David Shoebridge, another dingbat, goes, tomorrow we march across the bridge to stand up to genocide, to sanction Israel, feed children and free Palestine. How the hell are you going to do that from the streets of Sydney, Australia? Let's just make that abundantly clear. How is you marching, waving flags that aren't even Australian, going to really solve the crisis at the moment in Gaza? I would love to have an answer to that because no one's been able to answer me. Bring your raincoat, bring your neighbors, bring your heart, and bring your banners. Yeah, bring your banners that are not Australian. Just wave the fact that you are pro-terror supporters all across Australia. There you go. You're basically siding with Hamas, which is a terrorist organization that wants to knock out Israel. There you go, Australia. Well done. You've created homegrown terrorists. New South Wales Supreme Court allows pro-Palestine march. Justice Belinda Rigg, of course, it's a woman. The march at this location is motivated by the belief that the horror and urgency of the situation in Gaza demands an urgent and extraordinary response from the people of the world. Yes, the urgent response from the people of the world happens to be shutting down Sydney Harbour Bridge, a major thoroughfare, and also shutting down other streets of Sydney. Sure, let's go and do that. All for what? For our political activism that doesn't achieve jack all, except making you all look like utter fools. So police had sought a prohibition order, arguing there was a public safety risk with large crowd numbers expected. So how are you supposed to control crowds like this? Like, goodness me, the police have to work overtime. So it's not just bad for the police that are putting their lives at risk, trying to keep everyone safe during these marches. What about the people? What about innocent people? Now, there are Australians that are patriotic that don't want this to go ahead. So they're also showing up. I wonder what that's going to entail or be like. But I understand we have a right to protest in Australia, but go protest peacefully somewhere where you're not going to cause issue. Like, Gaza is not going to change by you going and jumping up and down, yelling and screaming in the streets of Sydney, Australia. It ain't going to change. Just making that perfectly and abundantly clear. Reformed apologist goes, if I was in Sydney, I would join in with the protest. I'm not a leftist nor a progressive. You seem to sound like one if you wanted to join a protest in Sydney that is supportive of Islam and terrorism. But anyway, but the mass slaughter of innocent women and children in Gaza must end. At the hands of Hamas or Israel you're talking about? Because it seems to me that Hamas is the one that's killing their own citizens quite effectively. But hey, let's go with the Hamas propaganda. Why don't we? Christians, here we go, who rally against this protest should hang their heads in shame and never call themselves pro-life again. Well, guess what, mate? Screw you. You're not a Christian. If you're going to say that I'm not one, by not attending a protest that I have no belief whatsoever in its effectiveness or cause, how dare you say that I should hang my head in shame as a Christian and then not call myself pro-life? It's got nothing to do with being pro-life or not. That is one of the most dingbat kind of arguments I've heard in a long time. And I've heard some very stupid arguments, believe you me. This is a war. So I can't be Christian and call myself pro-life because a war's going on. And the one that actually started it is a terrorist organization. Is that what you're saying? Get real, mate. And you call yourself a Christian. And you call yourself not progressive. Could have fooled me quite considerably, mate. And John Ruddick goes, I was proud to march against COVID lockdowns. Tomorrow, I'll be proud to march against what can only be described as a genocide. Well, there's been several sources, including one of them, the New York Times, saying that there is no genocide going on in Gaza. But of course, we'll not talk about that. See you tomorrow. Maybe raining, but don't let that deter you. It's raining bullets in Gaza. Goodness me, these virtue signaling pompous dingbats. They really get my goat, don't they? Oh, dear, oh, dear. So Piers Morgan says this, not about the Sydney Harbour event that's going on, but he will go down in history for having the worst or the most stupid post of today. Not only all the other dingbats that have been promoting the Sydney Harbour Bridge and even Melbourne. We all know Melbourne's done for, same with Sydney. Both major cities in Australia going down the ever increasing dark hole, as it would seem. Cheryl E goes, and the winner of the single dumbest post of all time goes to Piers Morgan. How effing, what must you be to compare a video and images you can see with your own effing eyes to the word of a lying, manipulative, narcissist, terrorist group that murders its own people? Piers, it's not just that you're a joke. You're just a charlatan, a fraud, a clickbait piece of trash. You are part of the problem. You're an idiot. You are a useful idiot, Piers Morgan. He goes, it's interesting that all the prominent pro-Israeli voices on here who refuse to believe any Gazan casualty numbers published by the Hamas-run Palestinian Health Ministry accept the veracity of hostage pics/videos posted by Hamas without hesitation. Well, mate, seriously, that is one of the dumbest posts I have heard you put out in a very long time. But anyway, we can talk about it for quite some time, but let's just say this, right? The numbers coming out of the Gazan casualty, whatever, health ministry run by Hamas, they're completely different to the images that are coming out of the Israeli hostages that Hamas is putting out. But anyway, that just took me a few seconds to think about. Maybe if I spent a little bit more time talking about it, I could, yeah. But anyway, I'm just done. I'm done with stupidity, done with dumb people that have got no idea. Anyway, I guess we got to pray for Sydney, pray for Melbourne, just pray for Australia because we're doomed, man. Absolutely doomed by allowing pro-terrorism activists to march. Anyway, that's enough from me, but you guys take care. Be blessed, and I'll see you all in the next video.